Good morning, it's Dame from Dame's Place. I wanted to do a video today. I put some pictures up on, I posted a lot today on YouTube. A lot of stuff's on YouTube, but if you look for like standing still pictures, that's my grandma and my mother and her brother Ron and their stepdad Morgan. And the lady is my grandma, my mom, her brother, and their stepdad. That's their cool car, isn't that car cool? Get over to Oregon Diecast Racing on YouTube, Hot Wheels Diecast Racing. It is so fun. That's my husband's channel. I don't know what kind of car. I wanted to check and see what kind of car that one was. But today's Monday mail call, so he unboxes cars that he gets from all around the world. And you also could maybe get in, I think he's got one car left on his race for the 4th of July race. You can pick a car and you can get in the race and you'll be on YouTube on 4th of July racing. So that would be really cool. I tell stories about my family and everything they went through and the two sides of my family. My mother's side, my father's side. My father's side is from New York. My mother's side is from Lakeland, Florida. I went to school in both places. I went to like 13 schools before I graduated from high school. I went to lots of places. I moved around a lot as a kid. So I have different, like totally different high school experiences from my experience down south to my one up north. And today I posted some things about my grandpa Horsch, my papa Horsch. That's Tony Horsch. He was the first chief of police of Batavia. And with him, I think a lot of this, if you read through, he suffered a lot of racism and he suffered a turn of the times like it is now, okay? A criminalization of people with baseless laws that are just imposed by newcomers in different ways. And back then, his father came over from Prussia, from Ombersberg, which is where the Irminsul is, and the Irminsul tree. That's where the town that they're from. And they came over, and he had a farm, and he had his son had a boarding house on the depot, right by the Batavia depot. And back then, Batavia, New York, is between Rochester and Buffalo, halfway. It was really set to be a bigger city than the two, because at the time they were created, the Carrolls had a lot to do with Nathaniel Rochester and Rochester. And in Buffalo, I don't know all of them, but I'm a Larkin on that side. So Larkin Soap Company. Though they're not my close relatives. They're cousins down the road, I'm sure. But not, like, they're no close relatives. However, we had all the Larkin stuff. And my Nana had, and her husband had he started the Elks Club, Moose Club. That's Joe Larkin. And he was, like, quite a good-looking guy. And, you know, my Nana would tell the story with a heavy brogue. He was already gone by the time I came around, so I never met him. But my Nana was alive till 1980. And, she babysat me all the time. She lived with my grandparents, my Cahoon grandparents. I hope I can be quick with this. Sean's out. He's filming that's Mr. ODR at Oregon Diecast. So I'm trying to like get this in quick while it's quiet in here. So if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. I'm trying to grow the channel and hopefully get an art show up. So that would be great if you could do that. I'd appreciate it so much in these times. Okay. Now, let me get on with it, because I have a whole museum idea for my family and all these stories, because all these really enormous American things happened during their lifetimes. So, let me finish up with the Larkins. So when she got off the boat from County Cork, she said that Joe Larkin came to the end, and she came to Toronto. That's my great-grandma, my Nana, and she's a Larkin, and she came from Cork to Toronto and then to America, and she said that my Grandpa Joe like turned around and walked off away from her because she wasn't pretty enough. The picture, you know, like a fake picture or something. It was not true. He was just like, yeah, you know how they think things are funny like that. She was a beautiful lady, but I mean, you know, traditionally beautiful, maybe not, I don't know, but she was beautiful. They loved her. Her nickname was AC because she was AC Larkin, and they had a restaurant, tavern, which I didn't even know that. I found all this out in 2022. My family, my stepmother, she's responsible. My father's death I attribute to her completely straight away, and it's hard to talk about anything. That's why I haven't been on here, knowing the crime that was committed, and then it shan't be. There'll be no justice in that. You know what I'm saying? God will get her though. But yeah, that my Uncle Tom, the same thing, and it's all because of these family ties with the railroad and what they owned. And my other grandpa was Horatio Spafford, who he did the New York Gazetteer and the Canal Guide. There was canals everywhere, but they don't want that known. We thought the Erie Canal growing up was like the canal. They built this canal. There was canals everywhere. Now people can plainly see that, but even a few years ago, that wasn't, people would say that's not true or whatever. So these are the two sides. Oh, and Frank Horsch. So my Papa Horsch, he, okay, this is in the time of the 1800s. He comes over at about like before 40, I think. I can't recall offhand, but I can tell you. I mean, I have the information. That was in this box of pictures that stepmother stole, and they did this whole big deal with the city. This deal with this Genesee, it's Genesee County and in Batavia, New York. It's there. And so I don't say a lot about it because there's nothing I can do, and those powers are powerful. And if I told you how many times that I had been hurt by them, or, I'm just happy to be alive. So until I can find a lawyer to check everything out, there's nothing to do. So, in that regard, and it doesn't matter about the law about that, because in my opinion, the bad funeral director was who didn't have my uncle's body, and I had to look for all these family things, and at the same time they were tying it up, and there was a parade and a flag, a flag presentation to my cousins that didn't tell me about it, and I know more history about things than they did actually, because my grandfather was our historian, and they just had the records from the house that they, took over. But now, I didn't want to get into that too much, but it's been on that's why I haven't spoken, because it's so egregious, and they really did it, and it's not even, but there is no recompense for that. I know that, and sometimes I want to tell you, just accept it, and if you can forgive, I can forgive, because I should have been smarter on my own. You know what I mean? I shouldn't have let I never did trust any of them. I never did. And then I look back and you add it up, and I gotta shut this because they're cleaning the building. Oh, this poor girl. I'm sorry. Look how pretty she is. I want to paint that really, really well. Can you see the pins? Oh, they're so beautiful. So anyway, let me get to this. So, but I don't talk about my grandmother enough, and she raised me. My mother died she took her own life when I was 10, and we lived in Florida, and we were the Clampetts in that trailer. We lived in a trailer. I lived in a trailer with her down south. Now, the man she married was from a very wealthy family at one time, but they had lost their wealth. That's a whole nother story. That's the Smead family, and they had a girls' school. That's still a school now. It's called the Mommy Day School, and I think it's in Toledo, Ohio. And that's, my grandmother, this lady, his mother and up had a girls' school called the Smead Girls Finishing School, and it was a very prim and proper place. I mean, proper, like white gloves out, the girls. There's lots of articles, and there's articles for all these things in my family. So it's you don't know where to even begin. So I'm going to try to stay on track, though. So that's who she is. But my grandma is from Florida, but she's really from Alabama, and her parents were cotton farmers. They were sharecroppers, and they picked cotton. And then that kind of dried up, because I don't really think the cotton gin had too much to do with them in that time. What it had to do with, I think, was boll weevils and the Depression. The Depression came, and now you've got boll weevils that eat cotton, or they ruin it. Boll weevils, they're like a little mole or something, like a little old boll weevil. That's a Dwight Yoakam song. Shout out to Dwight. So boll weevils are bad on cotton, and those things happen. And where she was from, a CCC, that's a conservation camps, came during the Depression. That was to move people who she happened to be Park Creek native, Porch Creek native, they call them now, and some are down to Seminoles, and her family didn't, and you couldn't say it then because it was illegal to be native. The Porch Creek tribe has their history, and it's very, Chief McGee did a lot, so Chief McGee, so that's a Scottish name. Anyway, they're still around now. They don't take new, you can't apply to go in it or anything like that. So I don't have any papers on my statement that she was, but she was. So they hid that because that's also Jim Crow laws, and they had the 1 drop rule, and it was 1 drop of brown blood, whatever that was, could, like, you'd lose your legal, could you be locked up? Yes, I'm sure. And okay, so that's the situation she's in during the Depression. She's 10 years old, and she's got a 5-year-old sister, and she leaves with her mother and her grandpa, Glennie, and her papa, Henry. So they get in a bus, and she said her dad, they're very religious. Almost all my, not all, but I mean, a lot of my grandpas were preachers, or reverends, deacons. So, in that family especially. So, he's praying. They're Pentecostal. He's praying, and they're going down from Brantley, Alabama, to Camp Pahokee, which is on Lake Okeechobee. And in 1928, they had one of the most deadly hurricanes Florida's ever seen. I can't. Some people say upwards of 30,000 people died in that. And they're buried at Port Mayaca, which is where that grandpa is buried at that same Port Mayaca cemetery. And that's down where they had citrus camps, and they had the CCC conservation camp, and my Grandpa Moulton was crying. My grandma told me he was crying, tears streaming, praying, holding making everybody hold hands on the bus. Everybody hold hands on the bus and pray, and they had to and be quiet because they were so scared going through the turpentine farms, the pine trees. You could smell the turpentine. And those camps you couldn't get out of. You can look those up, man. You wanted to get out of those camps, they'd shoot you. They had armed guards at the gate. He said they could see the armed guards at the gate as they drove by on their bus, and they said they were just praying their bus driver didn't slow down. That always makes me cry. So they get down to Florida with these 2 little girls, and then I got my other aunties are with them. Like, the whole family goes down. There's about, I'd say 15 of them at least that I could go through right now. And they're all in the paperwork because you sign in, like, it's on the census. Okay, if you look up the census, all my family's on there. And they lived there at Camp Pahokee, and there was a white side and a black side because it was segregated south down then. They were down there. And that was up until, that's why my grandma came up north with these 2 kids. She came up north because she wanted them to not grow up in that kind of school system. She wanted a good education. His family ran a private girls' school for 100 years. It was a restaurant. Like they were going to have a good life, but they weren't wealthy by like any extent. They still had the big farm and pavilion, but they had blown up. It's weird. My grandpa wrote an article about the Texaco town across the street from my grandparents' farm on 19. That's the Smead farm on 19 and 20 right there. And Kitty Corner is Texaco town. And my grandfather was a writer for a lot of papers, and he wrote about the Sinclairs, who are actually my mother's side of the family. Sinclairs were putting up a gas station down from Texaco town, and there would be like a gas war. And at that farm, my Grandpa Smead's farm, his future daughter-in-law ended up living there. This girl is basically living there probably at the time he wrote the article. It's so oddly. He could never know that. She's born down south. They're born in Florida, but they move up when they're about this age, just school age. They came up north. So, he's praying. They're praying. Oh, because they had no shoes when they picked cotton. She said picking cotton was the worst thing ever. Her mom was sick a lot. She had like weak lungs or something. Like, I don't know if she had tuberculosis or not, because my grandma didn't get that. Like, nobody else in the family got sick is what I'm saying. And my grandfather's little brother, Oni, he died of the Spanish flu. You could just kind of go through it like since 2020. See how these things happen. Lots of a die-off. We're having a big die-off. And now we have a huge mental health crisis. This business isn't as well. Housing is off the charts. Crazy, insane laws, insane things going into effect in every state, and we're all just like spinning out. Like, what's going on? How could this happen? How is this going on? So, because it's planned so far ahead. You know what I'm saying? It's so planned ahead. And in looking back, you when you don't know your history, because I didn't. I thought I knew a lot, but I knew how I grew up, and I looked at it very much like I'm going to judge the people I know and the people that took care of me and the stories. I'm going to go on everything I was told, and that is what I did, and that is what I do for everybody that I can. But it is important to know that, oh yeah, your great-great-grandpa wrote the Gazetteer of New York. People treated me pretty poorly. Not all, but like being a waitress I was immediately assumed I was stupid. My grandmother was a waitress her whole life. This grandma. My other grandma's the writer. She's Marie Cahoon. That grandma, she wrote for the Catholic Press, for St. Anthony's Messenger. There's posts you'll see about her. But this grandma was a waitress. She worked at the Leroy Country Club, and she worked in Florida, or she worked at Reese Cliffs for 30 years. Like, she had those two jobs, but I mean, she did that all the time. And she did that for years in New York as well, like at the Leroy Country Club. I don't know how many years. But people would act like they didn't know who I was. I worked in Leroy for a few years, and most people would, when I would say, my mom is this person, and my grandma is this person, you know, a lot of people would say they didn't know, but not at Sonny's. When I worked there at that place, that was, everybody knew who she was, and a lot of people from Leroy, and everybody was cool, and like, nobody gaslit me about anything, but at the other place, they kind of did. But anyway, she was very beautiful, and she was very, you know, she was Southern. She was as Southern as you get, and she was also, like, when I think of how I was raised, I'm like, oh my God, everything is native. Everything was native, like, that she was teaching me how to say all the names right. She taught me where my real grandpa's place was. Those are Roland's in the middle of the state, the cattle farmers. She's taking me there to show me, and I'm feeding little horses and cattle around where we live in a trailer park in the middle of, like, probably some of their land, who knows, but we didn't see them. The guy, they separated, and she married, that's my grandpa that I grew up with, but that guy was up the road and for a while, and then he was a cowboy, and met her down when she was working down there. Okay, but not. No. Let me go back. He did not meet her when she was down there. I don't think that's how they met. I think they met up to where she went. So here's her story. They come on the bus. My grandpa, her father, is praying out loud. They're holding hands, whispers, so that no one hears them go by. They let the bus be silent by the pine farms, because they're plantations, and they got, the men will kill you. There's stories about black people that had tried to escape there, shot in the woods, like, you know, like hunted down. They don't let you out. And, you know, horrible, running through. There's a story of a couple guys that run through swamps for 16 miles or something. You know, you got gator snakes. I mean, it's amazing God was with them. But you know, she'd say, he would just cry and pray and say, Lord, don't let this bus break down. Lord, don't let us get to our destination. And they got there, and the camp was new, and it was clean, and it was like, you know, she said it was orderly and everything, and it had been bad. You know, she said they had been hungry, and they were eating nothing. They were eating air and water. So you got your meals there and stuff. It wasn't like a coal town, like coal mining necessarily. You know, she said that Daddy got paid there, and we all had fruit. They had fruit, like they gave him food and stuff. So although there was like a commissary store and stuff, you can go. I'd hope to have that up on the thing for you, but I don't. I was going to show you this too. I'll just kind of like, I'm not going to look at it too much. I'm just going to turn the pages. My husband ordered this for me. He gets me the Larkins stuff. It's so cool. From the soap company. You can look up in Buffalo. Let me see. I'll just kind of show you. But she was down there, and her mother went into labor with her little sister, Carolyn. And when she did, this was all their buildings. When she did, she lived, they did this there. They didn't go to a hospital. She lived, but she did not live past 10 days. She did not, she just couldn't, she was always kind of like a little sickly, my grandma said. And, you know, she would just catch things. She was kind of weak a little bit. And she got sick and died. And then my grandma became mother at 10 years old to her two sisters. And her two sisters, I'll show you this picture, are here. That's my Aunt Teen, and that's my Aunt Punk. That's who she died right after she had her, and she was 5, and my grandma was 15. Okay, that's long enough. I'll get back with that. Have a good day. Please like, subscribe, and share so that I can grow the channel and hopefully show you my artwork in some kind of great way where you could purchase it. All right, peace.